Life is hectic, demanding, and doesn't stop. When honest with ourselves, we must confess we often don't know what the hell we're doing. The Larkcast is an ongoing conversation about the inclusive and mischievous nature of God's presence through the lens of all the things that make up this phenomenon we refer to as life. Astonishing grace and refreshing honesty collide right here for your weekly encouragement.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Larkcast. I'm Tony, and with me is Russ. Hey, Russ.
Hey, Tony. How are you, friend?
Well, I was yawning like bad like a minute ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, why am I yawning? And you're like, bro, lack of oxygen to your brain. You got to just do like 7 deep breaths through your nose.
Yeah.
And I did that, and now I'm like high on oxygen. I'm like very lightheaded.
Yeah.
So I'm like high on oxygen. I'm ripping a 6 milligram peppermint Zen right now, and I think I'm just ready to roll.
I love it, man. Yeah, that whole piece on like the oxygen, the 7 breaths, the practice of that, it's in a new missional book that I've got coming out. Something I just wanted to share. Sorry. I'm just kidding.
Things you need before you go win people to Jesus.
Yep.
Take 7 deep breaths through your nose, pop a Zen, and drink black coffee. And you'll have all the energy you need for these
Man.
conversations.
It's called name of the book is seven breaths to breakthrough.
7 breakthrough breaths. The first breath is coffee breath. You're going to need some gum if you're going to do this.
Yes. Yes, you are. Yep. Nothing
The other
worse,
breath
man,
is
than
garlic breath. Garlic
to
breath
lean
is the
in.
next one. You're going to need some gum for that one too.
You're trying to lean in to make some really solid point about Jesus, and they're to lean him back.
Some of you need to not lean in because your breath
Yeah.
stinks so bad.
Oh man, this is funny. I love that we can laugh about these things because they're just so true. But it's a very fitting conversation to some of the news, man. Some of the news that I got to drop last week on this podcast.
Am I a bad person if I didn't listen to it? Can you break it
You
down?
are.
Summarize it.
You are. Yeah, it's now I got a chance to just unpack a little bit of some insights from the weekend. Kind of, it's a good reminder, man, of the word lark, like what it means, right? This picture of uninhibited freedom. We see it in how Jesus comes about uniting himself to us, and then we see that same freedom in what we've been invited into because, right, as the gospel story goes, the good news is Jesus. He is our union with God.
Yep.
Yeah, and anyways, got a chance to kind of break down some insights, man, through like all the ahas over the Galatians series so far that we've been in, and then yeah, man, and just sort of starting to, not sort of starting, I guess I'm just going all in on it. All this craziness has been going on in my household with health and all those things been taking shape since December. I'm behind the ball on saying, hey, the most effective way to help people live free is conversation with a friend. I know that sounds really simple and ordinary and could even be like, mundane. It's not, it's not real, as you've said before, it's not real like marketable, like in a church world that's like begging for hype. But it is what Jesus did.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what Jesus invited us into, is being a friend, man. Being free to be a friend.
Yeah.
Who can meet people where they are, pass on good news, do it with honesty, because they've got nothing to fear, nothing to hide. There's a connection that's found in that. There's an encouragement that's found in that. And it just seems people learn to live free in conversations with the free.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I call it I refer to it as like being a scandal monger, which can be a jarring word, but it's a fun word because the good news you're passing on is a scandal by all means. And the person who spreads the scandal, as Jesus did, just sometimes I laugh and just say, yeah, man, just being a scandal monger. But a better word would just be being a friend who has conversations.
Well, monger is such a, I don't know. It's like I think of like a mongoloid, you know?
Yeah.
It's like gout. It's like when I have to tell people that I got gout, it's like, I mean, I don't have gout right now, but it's just like one of
Mm,
those words. It's just kind of, it's just kind of ugly a little bit.
yeah. Yeah. It makes me question why I'm drawn to it the way that I
But
am.
yeah, no, for sure, man. Like,
Yeah.
um, man, we've said this so many times, you know, you just,
Yeah.
here's a, just a basic breakdown of what is. Like, let's say you're a person that loves Jesus because he first loved you. Like you've interacted with his his grace, his life, his death, his resurrection. You've come face to face with your love of control. You are at a place in your life where, all your towers of righteousness came crumbling down. Your illusions of control were ripped out from underneath you.
Mm,
And you, for the first time in a long time, needed to look outside of yourself and the life that you thought was perfect and controlled and great and wonderful. You had to look outside of yourself, you know, for not a guide, not a guru, not a rabbi, not a mentor, but a savior. Um, and you found that in Jesus, and
mm,
your mind was awakened, um, to how wonderful he is. Your heart exploded with gratitude and joy because of his grace and his love. And you found someone that loved you with no strings attached, where no performance was required, no list keeping, no lists at all. And man, you're like, dude, yes, Jesus. And you got plugged into a church, which is great because they're singing songs about this, and we're diving into the scriptures, and you're coming to realize it more in depth, like how awesome he is. You're finding a community, a place where you feel like you belong, and you're volunteering and you're jumping in and you're creating new friends, and your kids got a place and all that stuff. And then you are told, hey, part of this is passing this on. But
mm,
what they really meant was like, man, just bring them here. Like,
yeah.
we'll do it because surely I think this is great. This Sunday thing, this is awesome. So all my neighbors are going to think this is great too. And what you find is an environment that is, like, the phrase I want to use is not conducive, but there's probably a more simple way to say it. Like, it's just a weird environment for your friend who you're talking
Yeah.
to, because they got questions and they don't know any of these songs. They don't know any of this terminology. They don't know any of this language. And then the pastor dude gets up. They don't know who this guy is. And he's prepping in an office for a one-way conversation to have with 300 people, or maybe even more. So the chances of that being like super relevant to where a person is
Yeah.
pretty slim. Now, God in his goodness has a way of meeting people, right? We've heard, some stories
Hmm.
about that. But for most people, that's just not going to be the environment.
Yeah.
They want you. They want a friendship with you. They know you. They're open to sharing with you. And when you realize that dude, I think that for a lot of people I know, that's not going to be the thing. I just think a shared meal or a moment or a cigar or coffee or, and even just sitting in the driveway while our kids play, that's it, man. That's the place. That's the moment, where these things really get unpacked and people start to share and people start to open
Hmm.
up. And then you realize, holy cow, most people are like, man, I don't really know how to do this. I've never done this. And I don't even really think I'm not that good at it. And so then our inadequacies tend to be very much on display because, man, I'm really used to just like going to church and like doing that. But man, I don't know if I know how to navigate this. I don't really have
Yeah.
a lot of, you know, tools and language, and I really don't even know how to be because I'm just so used to going to these environments with trained professionals who know how to like do this, Jesus stuff. And yeah, most people come to find out like this is what, you know, is needed. But man, I really struggle here.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good way of looking at it, man. I think you captured the story of a lot of people from around the US that have come to this thing called LARK, this conversation, even beyond, man. I think that even hits the nail on the head. I was talking with somebody recently about it, and I thought they described this element really, really, really well. He said, dude, for so long I used to say that what we were doing in the name of church, like because God could move and speak in the middle of all this, and somebody came and they didn't know anyone, but then they heard this message and it was so relevant. And so, this was the evidence, right? Like that this thing is of the Lord. He said, but then I started really studying the scriptures and seeing this whole other thing in the name of church in the scriptures. And then I had this desire to go step into that simple, ordinary way of friendship, the way you actually see Jesus go about this. And it was in doing so that I realized that what I was a part of before and how God moved in it wasn't him saying, yes, this is my model, as much as it was him saying, no, I just love you and I love them. And I do so even in the midst of your broken model. This is evidence of my love and my leading you beyond this thing, not evidence of this is my thing. You must be a part.
Mhm.
And I was like, damn, that's 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 what we've been saying and teaching for a long time. But the way you just put that, together, I was like, dang, I don't think I've ever like heard it said that way.
Well, and like I think um with good intentions of trying to help um make this whole friendship and conversation thing in the church world, they call it, evangelism and discipleship. And it just reeks of like models and like packaged ways to like, put things and, and all
Yeah,
that. And it comes across like so mechanical, you know,
yeah,
because I don't really think a lot of church leaders and a lot of pastors, a lot of them don't have friendships either. And they're more teacher types. So they're going to resort to more like formulas and
yeah.
models, you know? And so, yeah, it's real easy to like put together a model with like three alliterated words and like, here's this packaged way, to say it. And they think they're doing a good job by checking the box and like helping people or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And then you actually like get into a conversation and you're like, dude, I'm a weirdo. I'm a freaking weirdo.
Yeah,
That was
this
that
doesn't
was
look
my
right.
story, man. I was in the church world for 10 years and I literally, dude, like I forgot how to just be a normal person, like at the
Mm-hmm.
table, to
Yeah,
just kind of talk about these things, in light of like my own story. Everything was like had this like real elevated language and all this other stuff. I had like in 2016, like I had to like, 14, 15, right around there. I had to like relearn to just be an everyday person.
yeah, yeah. Relearn like the life of faith when you think about it. It's it's kind of funny, when you like the thing that was supposed to empower us left us, I don't know, man, just kind of staring off into space like some weirdos in the neighborhood who just didn't know how to be a friend and do like normal things and celebrate normal things and have normal
Mhm.
conversations. I remember like it hitting me as a pastor looking out at the congregation going, man, we're teaching these things left and right. And there's two passages that would not, I just couldn't let go of. One, we've been teaching on here recently in the Galatians series, where freedom, for freedom, Christ set you free. And I'm looking out at this congregation and going, man, I feel like they know everything in the scriptures, but how to actually live free. This is weird. Something's off. And then number two, Jesus's words in Matthew 28, as you are going, this is something he says to all of us, as you are going, disciple others, baptize them and teach them to walk with me. And I'm looking at these people and I'm going, so they're not living in freedom and they're not equipped to actually go be friends who help people live free. What's going on here? And I can remember wrestling with that because, you're looking at something that you think is really effective and it's growing and it's got all the nickels and the noses attached to it, for signs of success. But again, not empowered for those simple things. And then I'm building friendships with neighbors because I'm learning to speak a different language and be normal, right? Like you. I started learning that in probably around 2011 and really wrestled with it up through about 2014 until I finally had to resign and just walk away. And I remember wondering, like, man, what does that look like, man, to just go be with people? What does that look like? And at the time, I used to just read everything that came out, and there was this book, Love Does by Bob Goff. You remember that book?
Yeah.
And there's like elements in there where I'm like, yeah, I
There's
don't,
always there's
jive.
always a book. There's always a
Yeah,
leader with a
always,
book.
always a leader with a book. And I didn't jive with a lot of things, but this was this dude, right, who was a lawyer who, was out like in the real world. He wasn't like working for a church and he's passing on some good news. And I can remember that reading that first chapter and going, holy cow, like there's a picture, man, of like what I've been trying to put a finger on. And he just tells a story about like, he was in high school, man, and I love the way I love the way he said it. Says, I don't know about you, but high school was really tough for me. I wasn't getting girls. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good at sports. I had this GPA you could count up on two fingers. And there was a guy that showed up in my high school. His name was Randy, and he had a motorcycle, a beard, and a girlfriend. I kind of hated him because I wanted a motorcycle, a beard, and a girlfriend. And he says that he was with this outfit called Young Life, which is kind of this like ministry that gets people out like in the real world. And this dude used to just come, man, and hang out and just wanted to be my friend, man. And that was kind of weird for me at first, but then I was kind of drawn to him at the same time. And we found a friendship. And he said, man, I finally came to a breaking point in my life. And I just showed up at this dude's house on a Saturday morning. This is all something that, Bob writes about. He says, I show up at his doorstep, man, and I'm like, I'm out, dude. I can't do this anymore. I'm quitting the high school thing. I'm hitting the road. I'm going to Yosemite to climb rocks. And he said, this dude Randy just
Better
looks
than
at him.
collecting rocks.
Yeah. It's a Saturday morning. He said, this guy just looks at me and he's like, what? And he kind of, unpacks his story and what he's wrestling with. And he goes, Randy says, all right, man, I'll be right back. He says he disappears for a few minutes. He comes walking out and he's got his bag on. And he goes, how we getting there? And Bob says, I point to my Volkswagen. I go, right there, man, I got a ride. And he goes, all right, let's go. And he said, Randy gets in a car with me, man. And we take off for Yosemite. And we get a hotel room. And he doesn't preach at me. He's not like drawing up life lessons or anything like that. We're just hanging out. He says, I applied for jobs everywhere. He said it came down to I literally applied like at a diner to make waffles and they said no. It's like, so every job I tried, I struck out. And eventually I'm like, I give up. And so the next day we load up and we go back home. And he said, we pull up to his house and his girlfriend's car is in the driveway. And Randy invited me to come in for a minute. And so he goes inside. His girlfriend's not there, but the car's there, and there's boxes everywhere, and there's a microwave and a fridge. And he goes, like, it wasn't Christmas, and I didn't think it was his birthday. And I'm just looking around this house full of boxes, and I'm like, dude, what's going on here? He goes, and then it dawned on me. I showed up yesterday, Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, and Randy got married that morning. And on the night that this dude got married, I show up at his door, and he grabs a bag and he gets in the car with me and takes off.
Dude,
He said, for the first time in my life, the word Emmanuel, the word that God used to describe himself, hit me. I'm with you. And he said, and it just played over and over in my head because every time I shared what I was dealing with, every time I shared my struggle, every time I went through like why I'm doing this, all Randy said is, I'm with you, dude. I'm with you.
that's a
And
good
that
one,
began
man.
his journey, man, into the life of faith. And I just remember reading that as a pastor of this successful, growing, multiplying church and going, that I want, I want to, I want to, I want to be with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's Jesus. That's the life of faith. That's the journey I've been invited into. That's what he did. And yet I'm running around doing everything but what he actually did
Mm-hmm.
and invited me into. And that was, dude, for me, it was like from that moment on was the planning of the Exodus and going and being a friend like Randy
Yep.
and trying to help people do the same, man.
Just being with people.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
you know, I remember in an effort to really like make these things go, you know, to really, see people awaken to Emmanuel, the God that is with them, whose promises presence,
Mm-hmm.
irregardless of their behavior, because our brokenness has never been a barrier, you know, to God having
No.
relationship um, and interacting with us. He's taken care of all of that in his son. He's reconciled all
Mm-hmm.
things in an effort to really make, this happen. You'd come up with these, you know, formulas and paradigms and, what did we call them earlier? Models.
Yep.
And in your mind, you imagine them just like being, very simple. Like, oh, this will probably just take like one conversation, or oh, this is like, this is pretty simple. Until you realize, like, you know, God's never quick about anything.
No.
Nothing. Which is one of the most frustrating things about
Yep.
life with God is he's not quick about anything. And
Like
oftentimes he's
most,
very silent, you know, and you're just begging, you want this like word about this thing or clarity about this thing or show me or
yep.
man, if you would just speak to me, and a lot of times he's just quiet and he's slow. And when I met um, my friend Tim, dude, it was a 6-year friendship before any kind of like just substantial, conversation or openness even to this conversation came about. And I was like,
Mm,
dang, man, like no one ever equipped me, if you want to use that word equip. No one ever put it in my brain that actually just being a friend in this world, you know, might be a 6-year journey with
yep.
somebody. Um, but dying to maybe the pursuit of impact, the idol of impact, the
Mm-hmm.
pursuit and the idol of fruit. You know, it's only it's only being okay with the freedom that we have in Jesus and not having to walk around and like prove, that we're really truly disciples that can let you sit in a 6-year friendship or in a
Yeah.
community with a business, and a family and just being a neighbor for a long time. Because I can't make any of my friends or my neighbors be interested in this conversation. I can't. I can't
Yeah.
do it. But what I can do is stick around long enough, you know, for that moment. And when that moment
Yep.
comes, be a friend
Yep.
and be with them.
That's it, man. It's just conversations, friendship. It's as simple as that. The church is who you are, right? By scripture. We've taught on this a lot. So if you're new to this conversation, you're listening in, welcome. Glad you're here. Please know that according to the Bible, the church, by definition, is a descriptor of who you are in Jesus,
Yep.
wherever you are. It's not something you go to, it's who you are. And
It's not a
the
church.
church
It's not a
gathered.
service.
Yeah,
It's not
it's just not.
songs.
And of course, everyone's always like, yeah, but the church gathered. Yeah, yeah, the church gathered. And Jesus said, wherever two or more are gathered in a conversation about him, his grace, his love, right? Forgiveness, faith, the stuff that the mojo that makes up this, you know what I mean? The meaning of this life and purpose, right? Wherever that conversation is, however messy it is the church gathered. That's the beauty of it, right? Bob and Randy in the Volkswagen driving to Yosemite. That's the church gathered. It's so simple, man. It's so ordinary. It's so beautiful. It's so life-changing if we just let it be that simple. And I think that's why I've been coming out with like, hey, Lark exists to help you. Like, we're real serious about helping people learn to live free, as we sometimes say, but not much else. Like, we're gonna keep doing that. I believe that people need healing, not a manual. So we're gonna keep doing this. But we're also going to help people go be a friend who helps other people live free. Because we are fully convinced that where it happens best is in friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And in a day and time, dude, we're like 80% of society is not going to a church gathering of any kind. I don't care how cool you try to make it, they're not coming. Man, all right. Amen to empowering a global movement of friends. Like, let's do that. Let's be that. Let's learn to go be Randy's, man, because there's just so much joy that's really found in this. And you're right, it does take time and it is messy, but it's meaningful and it's life-giving. Not just for the person that you're investing in, but even your own story. And
Yep.
as you said earlier, so just spot on, man. All that other stuff that we've been taught to run around and chase after, yeah, that's already all done and finished. Jesus said so. Literally his words, it is finished. You're free to go live the life of faith, to see
Mm-hmm.
what he's doing and join in and trust that despite what you're struggling with, he's present, man, with you and the people that you're loving on. And I love that. And there's a fun element to it, man. I saw this meme the other day. It said everyone needs a friend. They shouldn't be allowed to sit next to it at serious functions. And I found myself going, I need to get Tony to see if he could design us like one of those old school like marquees, like image that just says everyone needs a friend. They shouldn't be allowed to sit next to at serious functions. And then underneath it, Lark exists to help you be that friend. Like, that's what we do because there's a fun element to this, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, we've been taught to take ourselves so serious because we don't take Jesus serious enough. And there, there's just this real, I think there's just this real fun adventure found in being that friend.
Well, and how great is it, like when, someone who, we work with or, know in our communities, or maybe we meet in an online community, like my
Mm-hmm.
friend, Jake, who's like plugged in with like a lot of people you know, who ride Harleys and, you know,
Drake, love that dude.
and they're 200 miles away, but he's the one person that they reach out to when, the shit hits the fan. And, Jake's the kind of dude that'll be like, dude, I'll get on my bike like today. I'll ride down there, and chat with you, about this.
Mm,
How great is it like when that crisis, comes, like at that moment that makes you really take a hard look at your life. There's a lot of like fear around that, there's a lot
mm,
of misunderstanding about like who God is, and you're at a place where you're feeling low, like you just don't, you don't have it, you don't have what it takes, you feel like a failure. Maybe you think
yep.
like, man, God's abandoned you, or he feels distant, or he's pissed, or you're feeling like a lot of condemnation or whatever. And how great is it to just look someone in the eye and just tell them about what God's really like?
Yes. Yep.
To bring relief to their fear, to bring good news to their bad news, um, to bring um, rest to their restlessness, um, and to do that in a moment where they're, really truly, asking. And I hate that this is the case, and I have for a while, but I hate that it's like most often the 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 circumstances that we evil is where we meet God, and difficulty is where we meet God. It's like
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis said, like suffering, trial, pain, those are God's megaphones in the world to rouse a deaf world. And it's in those moments that we really truly start, asking, like in our failure, again, like when our control collapses, when our towers of righteousness collapse, like whatever the way you are trying to control your life. It could be in a religious way, a moralistic way, it could be a rebellious, like I'm just doing life like how I want to do it. When those things come crashing down, it's a real crisis. And
Yeah.
so to be able to bring relief, to be able to bring good news. Dude, still to this day, I have a lot of things that I enjoy doing. Like I love what I do for, a job. I love doing this, podcast. I love being a part of the Lark community. Still to this day, man, like the thing that brings me the most joy is be able to have that conversation.
It's the best.
It's the freaking best, dude.
It is. It's so that's what I'm saying. Like it's not just life giving to the individual, man, that you're talking to. It's it's just so damn joyful for yourself when you get to unpack that, man. And I I'll just share this. I can remember like backing up to what I was sharing earlier, like the whole like reading that about Randy and going, okay, there's a picture of what that looks like. But then I can also remember thinking about, okay, I'm not in a position where if somebody showed up at my house on the day I got married, I could just throw a bag on and hop in a car and jet. You know what I'm
I was I was gonna say
saying?
Randy came home to a pissed wife.
Yeah, Randy's divorced now, but Bob's going to heaven. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, but I'm just saying that people can read that story and it's beautiful and it's inspirational and it's true. But I think a lot of us hear it and we're like, man, that sounds awesome, but I can't. I don't have the the structure in my life to just be able to pick up and do things like that. And so I can remember wondering, like, well, so what does it look like to be a friend then? I know the passing on of good news and conversations, but what about like the friendship that surrounds that? Because it's hard, man. Like, I can't really juggle and be a part of this church world community click thing over here and then actually have the bandwidth to go about being a friend to all the people in and around me, like the way we see Jesus going about things. It's just impossible, man. Like you have limited margin.
Hmm.
And so I started moving toward that. And I remember sharing that story about Bob and Randy with people and them loving that. But like, man, what does that look like? And I was at a point in my life where I could, because you remember being dude a pastor where you had like certain people that you could listen to. but then you had like this other camp over here that you're not allowed to, listen to. And back in the day, the guy over on the other side of the aisle was a sociologist. Actually, he was an ordained minister, but he worked as a sociologist and a professor. Was a dude named Tony Campolo. And right, we weren't allowed to like run in that tribe.
Yeah,
But I
because
was
he
finally
said
at a point,
shit
like you
at a
said,
Dove Awards or something.
yes, yep. It's just so ridiculous when you look back on it. But I was at a point, like you said, man, like crisis in life that opened me up to wanting to hear and to learn. And I came across this story, man, that he told about traveling to Honolulu, Hawaii to speak, and the time difference from Philadelphia. And he's like, man, it's 3 a.m. I'm starving. Everything's closed. So I go down to the front counter at the hotel. Where can I get a bite to eat? And they're like, well, there's this shady side street a few blocks up. You'll see diner lit up above, the sign. They're open. So he walks down there and he goes to this diner and he sits down and he said it's a sticky place, man. And he said about 3 a.m., about 8 or 9 prostitutes come walking in and they all sit down right next to him because all there is just one long bar, right? And stools. And he said the one next to him, she says, she's talking to the girl next to her. She says, it's my birthday tomorrow. She goes, what? She goes, it's my birthday tomorrow. I'm going to be 39. So she's like, so what? What do you want us to do? You want us to like throw you a party or something? She's like, geez, calm down. I'm just saying that it's my birthday tomorrow. That's all. Besides, I've never had a birthday party in my life. They talk for a little while and then they leave. And Tony says he looks up at the guy at the counter and he goes, these ladies, they come in here every night? He goes, yeah, every night about the same time. He said, the one next to me. He goes, yeah, that's Agnes. He goes, she said it's her birthday tomorrow. He goes, yeah. He goes, what do you think about throwing her a birthday party? That's a swell idea, mister. Hey, June. And he calls his wife out. And he said, this old lady comes out who's the cook in the back. And she comes out with this greasy apron, wipes her hands on it, and then like shakes his hand. And he's like talking with her and tells her his idea. And she says, mister, she's one of the nice ones around here. People don't know that. But I love your idea. He says, can I decorate the place? She goes, to your heart's content. And then this guy speaks up and he goes, I'll make the cake. And he's like, oh boy. So next day, Tony says he goes down there, he gets there early, he decorates the whole place. And June, the lady there at the diner, she got the word out. And he said about 2:30 a.m., he said the place is packed wall to wall with prostitutes and just him. And they get this cake set up. And about 3 a.m., Agnes and her crew come walking in and they all shout, happy birthday. He said, man, her knees like freaking buckled. He said, I never seen someone more shocked in all my life. Hmm. She couldn't even walk. And they walked her to the counter and she sat down and they all sang happy birthday. And she blew out the candles. And then the big guy behind the counter handed her a knife. He said, okay, enough of the crying. Let's cut this cake. And she couldn't cut it. And she just kind of stood there and she looks at Tony and she says, can I not cut the cake? And he goes, well, we're all here for your birthday. And she's like, I know, but I'd really love to take this home and show my mom. Hmm. He's like, right now? She's like, yeah, I just live 2 doors down. I promise I'll be right back. He's like, what? Okay, I mean, it's your cake. So she gets up and she takes the cake and she leaves. And he said, it's just like this weird, like awkward silence. And he said, it was in that moment that I chose to pray. He said, looking back on it, probably not the best timing. He said, but I just invited everybody, pray with me. And he just began talking to Jesus about the beauty of Agnes and who she is, and just asking God to deliver her of all the harm and the evil that's been done to her and the things that she's even stepped into. And he got his chance to really unpack good news for everybody in that place. And he says, amen. And everybody says, amen. And he said, that guy looks at him and he goes, hey, you said you were a sociologist. You're not a sociologist. He said, you're a preacher. And he says, what kind of church do you preach at? And Tony said, in that moment, he had no plan of sharing this, but it just hit him. And he looked up at the guy and the whole crowd of people staring at him. He said, I'm a member of a church who throws birthday parties at 3 a.m. for prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And he said, that guy looks at him, he goes, no, you ain't. No, you ain't. Because I'd join a church like that. And I love this line. He said, I looked at him and I said, and Tony said, wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all? Mm. Dude, I've been doing this for 24 years. And I am convinced that the likelihood of you being able to start and sustain a church that does things like that is not going to happen. Mm. But the beautiful invitation of the good news of Jesus is that you are the church. Mm-hmm. And you are free, damn it, to go be a friend like that.
Dude.
Go be a friend like Randy. Go throw birthday parties for prostitutes. Go help your neighbor clean out their gutters. Throw a cookout. I don't care. The list is endless. I'm just saying to all of you out there, that's what we're doing. That's what we're empowering. And if you want to be that friend, reach out to us. larksite.com. Click on it. Become a friend. Schedule a call. Whatever you want. But I don't want to wait around, to get some organization aligned to that when we're already free to just go be those friends.
Yeah. Man, if there was ever a birthday song that I wish I was there for.
Yes.
It would have been that one.
It's the best, man. Like I said, I read the Randy story and I'm like, I love it, but it's not practical for all of us. But then I hear a story like that and I'm like, that dude just literally heard something and just went down to the dollar store and came back the next day with some decorations.
I love it.
And some good news. It's that damn simple, man. Let's let it be that. So reach out to us, folks. We're here. We'd love to help you be those friends. Cheers.
Cheers.